very big world. There is enough room in this world for every single one of you to be successful, for every single one of you to have your dreams come true. And you're really not in competition with one another. You're only in competition with yourself. And so I want to take 5 minutes to give you the trick to how you disrupt your own behavior and your own perspective. And it starts with a question. How long does it take to actually change? Major change in your business, in your life, in how you are as a leader actually happens in micro moments. And here are going to be the 3 obstacles that you're going to face if you want to try to do something new. First of all, it's going to be your brain, which is what we're going to talk about today. Secondly, it's success. So the more successful you are, the harder it is for you to change. And the reason why is because, first of all, you've spent years and years doing things a certain way, and you've become very successful because of it, and you've probably convinced yourself that if you do something different, it's going to sabotage your success. That sort of thinking didn't work out very well for Blockbuster, didn't work out very well for Kodak, and it doesn't work out very well for human beings. The other factor, fear. But we're going to focus on this one, the brain. So I love the tagline for Nike, and the reason why is because of this word, just. Their tagline could have been, do it, right? But Nike understood something. They understood that even for a professional athlete, there's always the moment of hesitation before you're going to take a new action. Physicists actually call it activation energy, the fact that in order to stop doing something like sitting at your computer and actually force yourself to do something else, it takes a certain amount of energy to activate the new behavior. And Nike knew this. That's why the tagline's so powerful. The just is a nod to the fact that there's a moment of hesitation. Where does the hesitation come from? Well, it doesn't come from the pleasure center. How many of you have heard of dopamine or cocaine? Or, this is where Professor Roberts' rock and roll and emotion and all that stuff, the reward center of the brain exists. But what you need in order to change behavior, in order to put down the phone, in order to actually reverse mentor, like Lisa was talking about when she said, just get somebody younger who's a digital native to actually mentor you in technology, you need the prefrontal cortex. And here's the problem. The problem is, even though your brain's pretty amazing and this supercomputer that can process information really quickly, it only really has 2 modes. Either autopilot, or you disengage from autopilot and you're directing your thoughts. Now, how many of you have ever driven to work and you get there and you go, who drove the car? You have that feeling like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking and somehow the car got here. Well, you were actually driving the car. It's just that your brain was an autopilot because you've done it so many times the same way. In order to change your behavior, you have to check out of autopilot and check into drive. You have to use your prefrontal cortex. Now, your brain's going to hate that idea because look at all of these things that are crunching on your head. Whenever you feel stressed, whenever you fall into a routine, whenever you have too much choice, whenever you get overwhelmed by the pace of life or the connectivity that we live in, or there's fear, what happens, oops, does anybody know the attention span of a goldfish? Anybody? Nope, not 3 seconds. Nope. Close, 9 seconds. A goldfish actually has a longer attention span than a human being. Not kidding. Also, 270 cereal choices in the average American supermarket. 270, 41,000 products in the average supermarket. Your brain, when it's presented with too many choices, either makes the same choice all the time or none at all. Bridget was talking about putting down the phone. Do you know that if you have unanswered emails in front of you on your phone, that it lowers your working IQ by 10 points? It's hugely distracting. So what does all this do? The spotlight effect. They did this interesting study at Cornell University where they gave students a Barry Manilow t-shirt. And of course, they were mortified wearing a Barry Manilow t-shirt. And the students were asked to walk into a room where there were a bunch of people that were facing the door. And then they asked the students, how many people do you think noticed that you were wearing this embarrassing t-shirt? The students thought that at least 50% of them notice. Turns out only 20% does. Your brain overestimates the amount of attention that is on you. And, honestly, nobody cares what you're doing. They're busy thinking about what they're doing. But by having this spotlight effect, you overestimate how your exposure is. So what happens when these things happen? Well, your brain gets flooded with cortisol, and suddenly you don't feel like doing anything. And this is how it plays out. So if you have a dream, you want to write a book, immediately, if you think about it, because you need your prefrontal cortex, you're going to get uncertain, and immediately your brain's going to say, nope, not going to do it. If you want to change ad tech platforms, you're suddenly going to feel overwhelmed by the number of choices that are presented to you, and you're going to feel like, I don't want to do it. If you want to volunteer, you got inspired by Blake. Suddenly, you're going to feel like, I don't have any time. Your brain's going to kill the idea. You want to get back in shape? You're too tired to do that. Brain's going to kill the idea. You want to start dating again? You're a little nervous about that because of all the stalkers online. Within 5 seconds, your brain kills your interest in doing something new. You know exactly what you need to do to change. Everybody does. Raise your hand if you'd like to lose weight or get in better shape. Raise your hand. Yes, we all would. And keep it raised if you know exactly what to do. You have all the information you need. It's just a matter of whether or not you feel like doing it. And that's the fact. Here's the truth. You're never going to feel like it. Ever. And you never did. People only do the things they're paid to do, that they're pushed to do, that's what we call parenting, or that they feel a deeply personal connection to doing. If you think about what you were like as a kid, you never felt like doing your homework, you never felt like bussing the table, you never felt like wearing your Sunday best, you never felt like looking adults in the eyes, you never felt like using your manners, you never felt like clearing the table or feeding the dog or going outside to play or turning off the computer. And you still don't feel like doing things. My son never feels like getting off the computer, and then when I come back 5 minutes later after I've told him to, he gives you that look. You've seen that look before, right? They never feel like actually clothing the Barbies. I don't know why that's the case, but it's true. You only do the things you feel like doing. So when you hear an extraordinary panel like this, or you get inspired by, John from IBM about the potential for thinking in machines, and you're at that moment where you're sitting at your desk, and that person walks in that you can't stand at work, and you know you should acknowledge them, are you going to feel like it? Of course not. It's in that moment that you either do or don't. You have to act within 5 seconds, and this is how you do it. This is how you're going to practice it at this conference. We only have a few hours left. So I've been trying to drive personal connection, direct connection with direct marketers, and you guys have been really awesome as you're kind of getting, the ice is breaking. But I want you to play this game with yourself so you notice how weird you are. As you scan the room throughout the day, notice who you're drawn to. The second you feel the impulse that this person looks interesting, start connecting. Lisa told you that the most important thing you could do is network. Start walking within 5 seconds. Because if you don't start walking, you're going to be up here and you're going to be like, oh, they're talking to somebody I don't know. This looks kind of weird. I'll catch them at the next session. Not going to happen. Why am I asking you to do something physical? Does anybody know the age at which the brain stops growing? Anyone? Guess? 16? Nope. 25? You would have been correct 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we thought the brain stopped growing at the age of 25. The answer now is never. It stops growing when you're dead. How many of you have heard the word neuroplasticity? Right? So I saw a really interesting way to explain this. The truth is your brain's always growing and expanding. That's why you can always learn new things, which is amazing because it allows for what we call behavioral flexibility, meaning there's no reason for you to ever be stagnant, not in business, not as a leader, not as a human being. So let me show you what neuroplasticity is. So this kid who's making a handprint, pressing down in the clay, that's what your brain basically does when it's learning new information. So when I'm telling you you have that impulse to start writing a book, you don't start writing right now, make a note to yourself, send yourself an email, turn to the person and talk. Do something physical because that's the first imprint in creating a new neural pathway. So what happens is when you marry impulse with behavior, when you know what you're supposed to do, you don't feel like it, but within 5 seconds, you actually take some form of action. You're making that first impression. Let me show you a few examples. Does anybody recognize this photo? Amazing story. I'll probably cry when I tell you this. So the Todd that is in front doing this was the father of the bride. And he was walking his daughter up the aisle just this past week, and he had this impulse. The guy in the back is his daughter's stepfather. They hate each other. Hate each other. It's been like disastrous for 10 years. So he's walking up the aisle with his daughter. He has this impulse like, oh, I really should. Stops within 5 seconds, starts going through the aisle, grabs Todd, the stepdad, and brings him up. And they walk her up together. This thing has gone global. This is an example of using the 5-second rule. Had he not turned and started walking in 5 seconds, it never would have happened. Another example, Blake. I mean, my gosh, every single twist and turn. You notice how he said, I didn't have a business plan. I just felt something, and so I did it. When I speak to CEOs around the world, I call it the language of the mind and the language of the soul. You need the language of the mind for OpEx, gross margin, revenues, bookings, clients, business plans, strategy, product development. You need to listen to the language of the soul for curiosity, for your people, for your dreams, for your inspiration. Great leaders do both, and you can use the 5-second rule to actually turn it on.